honestly, it's really cool to have you here on the
Thank
Passion
you.
Podcast, Matthew. And I you've really inspired me, honestly, like in the last
Oh,
few weeks, few months, and stuff like that.
thank you.
With your obviously your desire for fitness, and but really how you're kind of like showcasing it and the purity of where it's coming from too. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
that's true.
And so, if you would, just go ahead and share a little bit about yourself.
Yeah.
Then I want to ask you a little bit about your testimony. Then we can dive into, what Horizon Running is all about and stuff. So,
So yeah.
where'd you grow up?
Good old Elizabeth City, North Carolina.
Hey, now.
I haven't moved since.
Cool,
Well,
man. No, you lived in
yeah, we
Chesapeake
lived
for a
in
little bit.
Chesapeake, Virginia, but
I think that's when I officially met you guys.
yeah,
You and your
I was,
family, yeah.
I was actually the only kid born here in EC. My parents were born
Okay.
in Virginia. Anna was born in Virginia. Michael was born in Virginia.
Yeah.
So like,
Well, my son
homegrown.
Theo's born in Elizabeth City too.
That's right,
so.
man. That's sick.
Well, tell me a little bit about
Oh,
your
yeah.
upbringing and family life and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I guess the earliest memory I have of any sort of step towards where I am right now would be when I lived in Pineview, which is
Oh, that's right.
over there, like the north side of town. It was 2014. I was around, I want to say 8 years old.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of crazy that long ago, but went to New Life Academy, and I think that's where I really started to get involved with the people in the city. And then I really didn't get involved into, I guess you could say, athletics until 8th grade, because I went to Elizabeth City Middle School at that time, played soccer there. And
Did New Life have any? They didn't have any sports programs or anything like that.
they did, but I didn't do anything in 6th or 7th grade
Yeah.
because I was there for 2 years. And then I went to ECMS because I needed to go to a public school. My parents felt like I should. And then I went to ECMS. And then after that, I went back to New Life for another year because my parents felt like we needed to be back at that school for another year. And that's when I was first opened up to running, ironically, which is pretty cool how, the Lord worked that
So you didn't
out.
play any sports really growing
Like
up.
I played soccer, and I
Okay.
played soccer in middle school. Oh well, the first like sport memory I have was playing rec league when I was like 6 years old. I want to say soccer wise, that was when we lived in Pinehurst. It was like in 2010, 2012, and I played baseball when I was like 3 or 4, but I barely remember any
Yeah.
of that. But seriously though, like I guess my first serious notion of my role and identity in sports was during middle school.
Cool.
And I took that through high school. And I guess you could say when I started running was obviously cross country in 9th grade. I never was a runner. I never looked like a runner. I was still growing. I was young. And something ignited within me during that cross country season. I guess that connected me to running in a way that I haven't felt connected to, like, soccer or baseball. Like soccer is my primary sport, but
Yeah.
running sort of took a more personal role, and I don't know how to explain it. It was definitely a Jesus thing. And I mean, he works in mysterious ways, and you can't really explain what he does. And I took that through cross country, and I started running at home a lot more when we lived in Pineview, and I really was captivated by the fight in the run. I don't know how to explain it, but when it's like you've got like a quarter mile left and you're just trying to get done, and so you just start sprinting and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yep.
how to explain
It's
it.
the
but
dig.
It's the dig,
Yep.
yeah. And I was really driven by that, and I looked forward to doing that when I was running, and it taught me a lot, and obviously it helped me lose weight because I was pretty overweight as a kid.
Tell me a little bit about
And-
that. What was your kind of like, how did you, because you said you didn't play too many sports growing up, a little bit of rec league here and there,
Yeah.
and it wasn't until middle school.
Yeah.
So what was your personal image like, like was there something about like your personal image that drove you to wanting to, get involved with fitness and running and stuff like that, or?
It was really like, personally, it was out of hatred for my body.
Wow.
And I'll be honest, it was brutal. There was a lot of times where I was like, I wish I was like the slimmer kids who could run a lot faster, do a lot more. And like, I love sports and I had the same passion they did. It's just I was limited by my body's capability.
Wow.
And I took it really personally. And, you know, there's a lot of times where I was like, man, if I was just 20 pounds lighter, or if I had better genetics, or if I was gifted with, you know, just something better to do what I
athleticism
thought.
or whatever,
but
you'd be more accepted or something.
It's interesting
right?
because me being set back that far almost gave me like a further slingshot. You know, the further you pull back, the further you go forward.
Wow, that's a good analogy. Yeah.
It's incredible because now it's like I'm an inspiration to everyone I was looking up to at that age. And that's how I really feel the Father moved me to where I am now. So
that's wild.
It's pretty incredible. And I've, you know, if I saw myself, you know, 10 years ago, I would have never thought this would be me, you know, thinking about running ultra marathons and done a few half marathons and, you know, running around my neighborhood hundreds of times, you know, like I've put more than enough miles around my neighborhood roads. But yeah, it was just like, it became very personal, and that's when I knew it became a part of me. And so I did cross country in 9th grade. 10th grade, I went to Pasquotank County High School, and my fitness was then challenged in a new way because high school soccer is completely different, and the physicality of obviously high school athletes was a lot more than in middle school. And I mean, I played with a lot of the same people because I grew up with them through middle and high school. And then I began doing swim team, which is a completely different experience. Like that challenged me in a completely new way. I remember the first night we had practice, and like 4 guys threw up and stuff. It was awful, but I didn't want to quit. And like my parents were like, you know, should you really be doing this? You know, this doesn't seem like a really safe thing right now, but it was like, no, I don't want to quit. I want to push myself. I want to do something that, one, is fun, and 2, is it's challenging, and that's how I'm going to grow. And so I stuck up for myself within that, and 3 years later, you know, I've grew a beautiful relationship with the swim coach, and I started coaching the swim team after I graduated, or helping coach, excuse me. And and also with soccer too, I was also like a side hand during practices because my brother plays there, and you know, I just have a lot of good relationships with those coaches. And so from there, after I graduated, I went to ECSU, and then this was around this time is where I really started taking running personally because I'm out of high school, I'm out of middle school. There's no high school sports and all that kind of jazz, but I started taking running a little more personally, and this is when I did my first half marathon, and this was a huge stepping stone. You know,
when was this? Was time frame year wise?
This first half marathon was fall of 2021, so it was that fall of my senior year of high school, and was incredible. I ran it with a bunch of friends and family in Cary, Raleigh. It's about like 30 minutes from Raleigh, I believe. And it was awesome. I did all I could training plan wise. You know, I just looked up online, you know, training plan for a half marathon, went through a bunch of different training plan types. And, you know, I ran long runs I never thought, you know, I could run. And so it was really cool to experience, you know, running greater distances. More personal running became. And I guess you could say I had a time goal. Obviously, like, I wanted to go under 2 hours for my first one. And I ran 2:03:54, which is decent for a first half marathon, but I always like to improve and I always want to get better. So it was a lot of fun, but I then did another half marathon when we went to Disney World that winter. I did like the Dine and Wine half marathon. It was cool. We ran through like the Magic Kingdom, Epcot, Animal Kingdom, and Hollywood Studios. You got to run around like the highways there in Florida.
That's cool.
It was sick because I had to wake up. Was
it hot though?
It was just humid.
Yeah.
But it was weird because I had to wake up at like 2:30 or no 1:30 in the morning get on the buses because the buses were running like 2:30 in the morning.
That's wild.
The race started at 5:30, but they opened I guess you could say the crowd area like at 2:30 because I mean there's tens of thousands of runners out there.
Yeah.
So it was really, really cool. And I ran like probably 2 hours and 12 minutes. That was more of like I guess you could say fun run. And I should have taken it a lot slower because of like what they were doing in the race. It was just like a big party, you could say. Mm-hmm. And then I did my third half marathon, which was the 2022 Coast Guard marathon weekend. And ironically, that was the first actual like in-person marathon weekend the Coast Guard was hosting that year. And I thought it was pretty cool that now like my fitness was at a point where I could participate in that.
Right.
And, you know, I feel
was there like a qualifier for that or?
No, they had a 5K the first day and then a half marathon and full marathon the next day, and anybody could enter.
Yeah.
And I ended up doing both, the 5K the night before and the half in the morning, and it was a lot of fun. It was really cold actually too. But yeah, I really enjoyed that weekend, and I ran like 22 minutes in the 5K, which was decent for the time I was running then. I mean, if I talk to myself now, it'd be like not that great. And then I ran like a 22 hours and 22 minutes in the half marathon because I like killed myself in the 5K the day before, which wasn't a smart idea, but sure. I was still learning about running and, you know, how to be a smart runner. And so after that, I continued running personally. Oh, I forgot to mention about my college cross country season.
Yeah.
So that was during, I want to say, right before the Disney half marathon, and my coach was actually a graduated runner from ECSU, and it was like my first time training with these like college guys, and you know, it challenged me because we were running against schools with dudes who were like from Kenya and, you know, people who grew up running. And it's like, you know, I didn't grow up with the same lifestyle they did. So how am I going to be able to compete against them? And obviously, like But
you found yourself there competing against them.
I found myself there competing against them.
Right.
Even though I was slow and I wasn't, you know, in the top of the pack, you know, I still had fun. I enjoyed the challenge and made a lot of really good friends doing it. And that brought me to where I am now. My latest cross-country season, we ended up getting a new coach because the other one had, like, work-life complications, so, like, he couldn't be there. And this new coach we got was actually, like, some certified track coach who taught in Norfolk, and he's been teaching track for, like, almost 20 years.
Wow.
And he's brought his athletes to, like, the Olympics, and some of them have won, like, the Junior Olympics and stuff like that.
That's awesome.
And I was like, this dude is no joke. And he'd mentioned he had coached a cross-country runner who ran, like, a 24-something in the AK, which is, like, under a 5-minute mile. And I was like, yeah, this guy knows what he's doing. Yeah. And I kid you not, the first week of training, me and the team thought we were going to die. Like, the amount of running and the sheer volume of running he presented us with was nothing I have ever done. Luckily, I had fasted before that training phase, and it kind of helped with my weight a little more because I knew with how much we were going to run, I was going to need to drop some weight. And we ended up running around 40 to 45 miles a week, which is pretty solid compared for a D2 school. Yep. And I mean, obviously we're not going to be up there with like the D1 schools running like 90, maybe even 100 miles a week. Like, that's a different caliber. We'll get there. Yeah. But it was really, really challenging, and that kind of snowballed into where I am today. That new state of intensity became the normal for me. Yeah. And I didn't want to lose it. It's like, okay, so now this is new ground. How much higher can I go?
That's wild, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you were able to get to a certain point yourself, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Through your own personal discipline and desire and drive, right? Yeah. You know, you found what you could dig inside of you to, you know, try to beat time goals and distances and stuff like that. But it took someone else to really push you beyond your own limitations, right?
It's like when your own strength is only so high, you can't go but so far. So having someone who has, one, the experience, and two, the wisdom to bring you to that place without harm, it was crucial. And like, I love him so much, and he's really brought me to a new place of fitness. And it was pretty cool too. At the end of the season, I was talking to him. We were on the way back from our conference championships, and I had showed him a picture of what I looked like when I was like 10 or 12. He was like, "There's no way that was you."
Yeah.
And it was like, it's sort of like full circled back to where I was, 8, 9 years ago. It was like, dude, you have a story. People need to see this. Yeah. And I was like, that touched me, because I never thought a 2-decade-old track coach who really knows what he's doing would say something like that. Yeah. And it was really it was beautiful, and I knew that I'm where I need to be. And I don't think it's any coincidence that my parents birthed a runner and their pastor's a forerunner.
Yeah, you're right.
I always thought that was pretty interesting.
There's no irony there.
I was like, there's no irony there at all.
That's awesome.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask you, so how do you think, or how essential do you think it is to have a coach in your life? Not just for like going to the next level of physical training, but like life coaching. I mean, there's so many principles, I think, that that flow over into just life's disciplines themselves that just parallel like training, you know what I mean, for greatness. You know what I mean? So how essential do you think it is to have a coach in your life?
I was like, I don't think we can improve without a coach. I mean, unless like you're working out on your own and you're learning things on your own, like at a very slow pace, that's different. But I mean, when you're talking competitive level, when you want to do things completely outside of your comfort zone, you need a coach. I mean, who is our ultimate coach? We can't lead this life by yourself. So it's pretty, it's like a parallel story. But it is really crucial to have a coach. I won't say he is my role model, because I mean, my role model is, Christ. We want to be like Christ. But no, it is really crucial on a realistic perspective to have a coach if you want to push yourself a certain way. And what he taught me, and, what he emphasized to me after showing him, who I was 10 years ago, it was like, man, I'm really reaching this type of caliber. I'm doing things not the average person usually does. Yeah. And I want to keep this caliber as my new normal and continue to push myself. Because there's people out there running 100, 120 miles a week, running ultra marathons every single month. Yeah. And it's like, why can't I do the same? Like, who says I couldn't do it? And I know it'll take time. And, 6 years have gone by and I've made so much progress. It's, how much longer until I could go past what I see these other people doing and become an inspiration to them. Yeah. And this sort of led to my social media growth. So I guess I can move into that now. Yeah.
Hey, quick plug. If you're enjoying this conversation, would you do me a favor and hit that like button, comment down below. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel for more content like this.
So I started to record videos of me running in the early days of like my cross country season, the most recent one, of course. And I started recording
just personally from your phone, right?
Yeah. And there was a couple content creators I followed who were I guess you could say hybrid athletes who like lift and run and just are sort of motivational speakers in a way. And I took a lot of the stuff from what they did. I try not to copy them, because I mean, you obviously want to have your own identity in something.
Yeah, of course.
And I started recording while I was running and just just documenting my journey. That was one way one of the creators had put it, and it was awesome. And it took me to a new level of, I guess you could say, brand growth and understanding who I was. And it takes some time. Like, if I look back and watch the videos now, I'd probably cringe and think it was weird, but I had to go through that process and learn where I want to be. Yep. And I want to say I have 160 something posts now, so about 160 days of posting.
That's awesome.
And it's like,
the consistency.
Yes, consistent. I'll get into that in a second. seeing, where I was and seeing the growth is parallel to seeing where I was 10 years ago to where I am now as a runner.
Yep.
And right now I'm sort of in like a strength training phase. So like the type of content I'm posting has changed a little, but it's interesting because I've learned how to professionalize that content and I guess you can say make it seem more attractive because learning cinema tricks and
Right, exactly.
to make, because I mean, obviously if you want to make something look appealing, it takes excellence. And I knew it was going to take time to learn that. So I used the knowledge that I had with recording and just documenting my journey.
Yeah. And so you started out, I remember, MJH running, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it was either, actually the first time it was just like my name and then I changed it to MJH running.
Yeah.
And then recently, I want to say around a month and a half ago is when I officially created a brand name.
And that is?
Horizon Running.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, so...
Tell me about the name.
Yeah, this is getting personal. So there's this field, there's actually multiple fields around where I live. And I used to love running in the evening all the time. And...
That's a beautiful time.
Oh my goodness.
Sunset.
It is.
Yeah.
And I would run to this field behind Walmart a good portion of the times I would run, and the sunsets there were always so beautiful, and I would go out to I would literally be in the middle of a field and just stand there and look at the horizon, and it was kind of like a Luke Skywalker moment, but that really sparked the captivation and the journey of running. I started running not because I wanted to reach fitness goals, but because of the beauty and what I was doing and what I was seeing. And that was I reached a new level of captivation within running. And I knew that it was far more than just reaching the finish line, that the journey is awesome. And, you have to take your time with it. And obviously over time, that's something I had to learn. I'm not perfect, of course. And there's days where I don't want to run at all. And then there's days where I want to go out and run for all day. And,
right, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's seeing the, I guess you could say just seeing the sunset. I really was captivated by that. I don't know why, but it led to where it was today. And yeah, that's really why Horizon Running was formed in that way, because I was always looking off to the horizon.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
that's cool. It makes me think, okay, so, I was in the military, right?
Yeah,
and
definitely.
So we trained and we ran a lot and stuff. And part of my training when I was in Pensacola, Florida, I had a difficult time, like I don't have the biggest stature, right? So my stride's a little bit shorter than like other guys and stuff. And so like if we're going on distant runs and we're doing like runs on the beach in the sand and stuff like that, like my lung capacity is a little bit smaller and my stride's not as long. So like I felt like I was like having to work a lot harder. Definitely. And one of my buddies, he was like 6'2", like 205, just in great shape. He'll run for days. And like I was like, dude, can you just carry me? Like, that'd be awesome. I was like, dude, what's your trick, man? Like, I get, like, the physicality, the difference between us. He's like, man, you know what I do? I just pick a cloud in the sky and I stare at the cloud the whole time. I was like,
it works, though.
I'm like, dude, I gotta retrain, the way that I discipline myself and what I focus on while I run, because I was so, like, hunched over and, like, looking at my feet, and I was so focused on every step ahead. Or the step right in front of me, that I couldn't get good posture.
You couldn't see the journey.
Right? I couldn't lift my head and get good posture, you know what I mean? And like just focus on like the horizon. Just something way beyond. And that's the pursuit. I don't know. It was just a story that I thought.
No, that's cool though. And it connects so well, because people hate running because of like, I'm not going to say everybody hates running, but I know people, it's hard to get into running because they think it's just a time of suffering. But if you pick your head up and look to the horizon, there's a whole journey ahead of you.
That's good, yeah.
And that's kind of why I haven't stopped, because I know every morning I wake up, there's a new adventure out there, whether I'm running at 5 or 6 in the morning or 5 or 6 in the evening, or I'm at the track running with friends. It's sort of like, it's an adventure to me. I can't put it into any other words. That's the way Christ has identified myself with running. And others can have the same identification too, as long as they put time into doing it, and it takes sacrifice. And that's where I'll go into next.
Let's hear it.
So I was able to connect running kind of like with my walk and with Christ, because of, Christ's long suffering for us. The way I thought is like, why shouldn't we suffer too? Not like in a bad way, but like, what Christ did for us. Why is it so hard to go run, 3 or 4 miles? And it's like, I connect my walk with the Father so deeply to running, because it's like, even on the hard days, you're pushing through. You're trying to tread through that suffering.
Right. A lot of people shy away from suffering because of the pain, right?
That's the truth.
But I mean, what I'm hearing is you tapped into something that you understand, that there's purpose in the suffering, right? There's an end goal, there's an end game, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, you're able to take on that same mentality which was in Christ, right?
Yeah.
Like, he was able to walk down that path to Golgotha, right? Carrying the cross. Why? For the joy that was set before him, right? And what I'm hearing from you, even what I've experienced myself too, is similar to like a runner's high, right? When you push through to the difficulties, and you're disciplined and you train yourself and you're consistent, your consistency, it produces and releases joy.
It genuinely does. And it's ironic. I had seen a video on Instagram regarding, like, whether you follow Christ or Satan. And it's like, following Satan is like these little steps of pleasure that ultimately leads to death, while following Christ are these little steps of suffering and death and losing something, but that ultimately leads to joy. So
isn't that wild?
Why can't, and it gives me this perspective, why can't I go out and run 10 or 12 miles and not go all the way through and make it to the end? I don't want to say it makes me feel like I'm weak that I can't, but it sort of pushes my mental state to a new understanding, you could say. And I know that, every day, whether what time I go out, I'm going to have to endure suffering at some point, and I know I'm faced with that mindset every day. So the truth in walking through the suffering is you can't, or you don't stop, And there's just, I knew I had to be consistent with suffering, because I mean, you've ran before, others have ran before. There's not a time where you don't feel like you're not suffering, even when it's like hot outside or really, really cold. Like there's been a bunch of times where I was like, man, I would just go turn right back around and go home.
You want to quit? Yeah.
But it's like, is that what Jesus would do?
Right.
And that's kind of how kind of what I live by, because I don't want to quit. If I don't quit on running, who's to say I'll quit on my family, I won't quit on my parents, I won't quit on friends, relationships.
Wow.
And, that's how personal running's gone. It's like, if I don't quit this 12-mile run, I know I won't quit for my family. I know I won't quit my walk with Christ.
Wow.
And it's really brought me to this place of, I'm not going to quit. And I refuse to quit. Even the times I, choose to, quit. There have been those days where it's like, man, I just can't go anymore.
You get to the end of yourself.
Yeah, and
you have to. You need those days, though.
Yeah.
When you get to those walls, right, you realize that we are dependent on grace. And we need grace to carry us through.
Definitely.
We need grace to either knock the wall down or give a strategy to get over it.
And it's interesting, too, because when I found myself trying to push that past that wall, I would end up hurting myself. So it's almost like Christ setting a barrier for you, because, of course, he wants you to go far, but he only wants to go a certain distance, whether that be in running or our walk in the church. Because, if any way I can put this into a realistic perspective, Khalid is working on me playing piano with him up on stage. Of course, the ultimate goal is to play with him on stage, but I have to have training. I can't, go and start playing with him next week. Yeah. There's time, there's understanding. I've got to learn like my scales. I've got to learn, timing, rhythm, learning how to, they call flow with a band, whether like the answer in the spontaneous. And there's certain steps we have to take in that process. And those quitting days are good for you, as you said.
Yeah. When it comes to like the difficult things in life, because there's a lot of things that you can parallel the training and the discipline of running to in life, right? You said that the Lord is using your love and your passion for running right now to build consistency and confidence and a commitment inside of you that's going to correlate to other areas in your life, to your family, to your relationships, your friends, job, and stuff like that. So what would you say to people who are struggling with their willingness or their desire to find passion? You know what I mean? It might not be a thing of a running thing. You know what I mean? It could be anything else. But what would you say to inspire people, because you're an inspiration to people? What would you say to inspire people if they can't find that dig, if they can't find what they're passionate about, or they want to have that same commitment or drive or motivation? Like, how do you find it?
Well, the first thing is people have a hard time. I guess you can, in a way to relate it, like people get personal trainers at the gym to help them get to a fitter state. And, it's hard for them to relate because those personal trainers have never been in their state of mind. Maybe they've always been fit and they took up training as a job. No, the way I see it is you can trust me because I've been there. I know what it's like. I've had to go through the fire and the flood and whatever it may be. And, you have to be consistent. Consistent is a pretty process. Yeah. It's you'll have your good days and your bad days, your good days and your bad days, but ultimately the chart goes up. Like if you pay attention to the details too much, you're only going to see the fluctuations. But if you really take time to understand where your consistency has brought you and push back the graph is going up. Consistency is a long-term process. You're never going to see results in 1 week, 3 weeks, maybe a couple months. And that's where I really learned the value of consistency. It's not a quick fix. I don't feel like there's ever a quick fix for anything. And that's what I had to learn too. Yeah. And so there is true value in being consistent with something. And, I do believe everybody is built for more because, as I said, if myself from 10 years ago saw myself now, I would have never thought I would have been at this place, but I had the passion. I was willing to be consistent. I was willing to make sacrifices. And that's the thing about today's generation. They're too comfortable. They're not willing to suffer. They're not willing to make sacrifices. They're not willing to lay down their life for Christ and follow him in a sense. And it's been something I've had to understand that we'll be more consistent when people do it together. It's hard to fight alone. I mean, if I can compare anything to that, I struggled with pornography for the longest time, and that is a very alone personal fight, and it's hard to talk about that.
It is, yeah.
And one thing my dad told me, it's better to struggle together than to fight alone because, it takes time, but as long as we hold ourselves accountable consistently, we will eventually break that bondage. And I broke it too. I mean, it doesn't mean the temptation still isn't there. Sure. But I haven't delved in pornography since I've broken that bondage. Yeah. And that can be a testimony to consistent accountability. And that same thing can take place in fitness, in the church, in life, in relationships, in family. Yeah. Whatever it may be, consistent accountability with one another is how we grow. Yeah. And I wish others would understand that, but they're so brainwashed by media's quick fixes, these, protein pills or like fat burner pills. Yep. And the media is toxic. If you want growth, it takes time. And I wish people would understand that,
Yeah. You just got to keep showing up.
Yeah. Right? Straight up.
Every morning.
Yeah.
Every time that alarm clock goes off, don't hit snooze.
No.
Roll out of bed.
It was funny because we saw the Mario movie last night, and everybody in the movie talks to Mario. It's like, you just don't know when to quit. You just don't know when to quit. And they would always tell him, you're the small guy. You can't do this. The movie's really good, by the way. And in the end, there was this one moment in the movie where it's kind of like the boss battle when he's like fighting Bowser and stuff. And he gets like absolutely chucked into this like restaurant and is like behind a table all bruised and messed up. And there was this one point where like he looks up and it's like, I'm not gonna quit. At your lowest, there's only one way to go.
Yep.
And it was incredible. And also what's interesting is that Mario was able to defeat Bowser only with his brother.
Wow.
It's so consistent accountability is what defeats your enemies.
Wow.
And
that's really good.
I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And, I took that movie to heart because I'm a big Mario fan. So, yeah, I thought that was pretty cool, though.
There's something about suffering along with somebody that actually makes the experience, I don't want to say enjoyable, but tolerable. Yeah. And then the memory becomes enjoyable.
Exactly.
Because you've shared a suffering with somebody, right? And that's what I loved about like group PT, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's getting beat down, getting sprayed in the face, you know what I mean? And like if you're consistent, if you showed up every day, right? Yeah. I mean, that was one of the goals in like military training, right? Is to get you to quit, right?
Yeah.
There's this phrase. Have you ever heard about the 40% rule?
Oh yeah, I have.
It's a mental rule of thumb, and it's your mind thinks that your limitation, your capacity is actually 40% of what you're actually capable of.
That's because your mind doesn't like to suffer. So that's why they say rule your mind. And the point in running for longer periods of time as you get further into running is to increase that tolerance to pain.
Yeah.
You can't tolerate 100% pain when you've only learned how to tolerate 10%. So it takes time.
Yeah,
and that's
absolutely.
A 3-mile run, 10 years ago for me is like an 8-mile run now. And, the longest one I've ran is maybe 16 miles. And I know I'm probably going to run longer in the future. Like I said to you, I want to run an ultra marathon. I want to do things outside of my comfort zone. I mean, you've probably heard of David Goggins' 4x48 challenge.
I haven't heard of the challenge, but I know David Goggins is.
So it's 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
What about sleep?
Yeah.
Like a 3.5 hour
probably like a
nap.
half-hour nap between. Yeah. But it's interesting because it'll teach you that state of don't quit. Maybe you've gone, you're like, 6 of the 4 mile workouts through and, you have like 2 left.
Yeah.
Are you going to do them? Or are you going to call it quits and not reach the finish line?
Yeah, right.
Because, the finish line is in sight. Why aren't you going? The gift is right there. Why don't you just take out and reach it? It's gonna hurt, but isn't the gift worth the pain?
Right.
So.
Yeah. So running. Let me ask you this: how much of running is a mental game?
100%.
Really?
I mean, like very little. Like, of course, it's gonna take some physical adaptation, but I love running because it is entirely mental. Like strength training is like a good portion physical because your strength training is you're literally building your muscles. I feel like anybody can go out and start walking and then reach running eventually if they want to get there. No, running is entirely mental, and I find more growth in running than I do strength training. If you want to strengthen
what type of growth though? What do you mean?
Resistance to intolerance.
Wow. Okay.
Because, if you ask anybody, would you rather go run 8 miles or work out in a gym for an hour? Everyone's going to say, I'm going to go work out in a gym.
I'd rather work out in a gym. Yeah. It's climate controlled.
Yeah, it's climate controlled. You got to worry about bugs, AC. Yep. No, it's if you really want to grow your pain tolerance and your resistance to suffering, go out and do something that doesn't stop until you reach the end.
Wow.
And,
obviously, that's hard.
Yeah, it's hard, but are you willing? And that's where the growth kicks in. Yeah. If you have to ask yourself, am I willing? That's when you're growing. And it's beautiful. And, some people think I'm crazy for what I do, but it's cool because I know I'm growing in the suffering.
Yeah.
And, you know, I hate to look down on others, but it's like, you know, you're too comfortable.
Yeah.
You know, what if there's a really tough time and where your family depends on something from you, and you're not willing to endure that suffering or pain, you know? How can you do that if you're not willing to go run 2 miles in the morning?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, if you haven't experienced that threshold of pain before, are you going to quit?
Exactly.
When it matters.
Yeah, and also like with meaning you said threshold, that's where like the heat of the fight is. I mean, it's in the word, and especially in my training plans too, because I would have threshold runs every Thursday, and it would be like I would have like a 10-minute warm up, and then I would do either 6 or 8 minutes at a threshold pace and like a 2-minute jog, but then I would do another round of that and then a 2-minute jog. And I would do anywhere from like 4 to like 6 rounds of that. And of course the run is like an hour 20, but the run doesn't really start until you hit the threshold. That's why in a ultra marathon, people say, you know, the race doesn't really start until mile 40.
Wow.
You know, and as I say, like when you feel like you're done, you're only at 40%.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, you know, and I find that so attractive. You know, if you feel like you're at the end, oh no, am I really at the end? You know, am I willing to keep going?
Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of training with someone or having a coach, because you are breaking those mental barriers. You know what I mean? You're reshaping and reforming paradigms that were limiters and inhibitors to your growth, but also your experience. Yeah. Because through the suffering, and this is a principle in the kingdom of God, through suffering comes joy.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And so how you correlate that to running, right? Sometimes there's pain. Yeah. There's a lot of discipline. There's a lot of limiters and mental barriers and stuff like that. But the key, you're saying, is consistency. You keep showing up. You keep pushing through. You keep trusting the voice of the coach who says, yes, you can. Keep pushing. Exactly. You got it inside of you, right? Yeah. And how much does that just like correspond and relate over to our walk in faith with Christ? You know what I mean?
It's interesting because suffering can be a part of your discipline. Suffering isn't something I guess you can say it's outside of our life. It's something we have to choose to do. No, you can make suffering a part of you, and growing with that, you know, your pain tolerance starts to increase a lot more. Yeah. You know, once you understand that our walk, like if you think being a Christian is going to be easy, no, you've been given the wrong message. Yeah. All right. When we signed that paper, we're following Jesus. No, we've signed up to give up social media. We've signed up to
give up
anything he wants us to. So suffering is a part of the discipline.
Yeah. And I think there's a beauty too in going through and experiencing it with someone else, you know?
Yeah, and I definitely believe that, you know, the further you go, it's better to go together. I was watching a documentary by, I don't know, do you know Nick Bear?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love
VPN.
that guy. Heck yeah. And he says that...
I'm a subscriber.
That's what's up. And he says in one of his ultramarathon documentaries, you know...
He's a beast.
If you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together.
That's really good.
And I've lived by that. I mean, of course, I run alone most of the time because there's not a lot of people that run where I live. But, you know, whether it be cross country or like these marathon races I do, I've found that when me and my teammates run together, we're stronger. And if I can give an example, when we were at championships last fall, you know, I told the guys, hey, let's start off a lot slower than what all these other runners are going to do, and we'll pick them off one by one by the time we get to the finish line. So it was like 3 of us because the other couple runners on our team were obviously a bit faster than us, so them hanging out with us wouldn't be of any benefit to them. But we knew that we were in the same position. We knew that we were comfortable running with each other because we were at similar paces. And we start together, and it was crazy because we started like at the very back of the pack, and everybody started to trail off. But we knew that this plan together was going to be stronger in the end. And I also believed that us running together was going to help us push each other to be faster. Because if one of us doesn't stop, who's to say the other two don't want to stop either? And it was interesting because by the time we had gotten to like mile 3 or 4, we had passed like a heck ton of runners because one, they went out too fast, and one, they went out alone.
Yep.
They didn't stick with their team. I mean, of course, if you have time differences, that's a different story. But no, we stuck within like maybe 15, 20 feet throughout the whole race. And we constantly pushed each other. That's why it's so important to have others to be accountable for how you're doing through the race.
Yep.
And, you know, towards the end, it was interesting because I saw these guys run a PR they haven't hit all season. Like they dropped 2 or maybe 3 minutes, but it's because we ran together.
Wow.
And it was beautiful because at the end, you know, we all gathered up, and like one of my teammates absolutely hugged me, you know, like, man, you brought us through this. This is how we got this far. This is how we we didn't play super high in the championship, but they ran really well. And that was one of the best races we ran as a team. And so that goes to show that if you communicate, hold accountability, and push each other, like the people who are with you, you're going to see a really beautiful result.
Wow. That's really cool, man.
Yeah, it was cool.
So a little bit of a recap, right? You didn't grow up with the most ideal image, right? You felt like you dealt with a lot of self-esteem issues and whatnot, and that was, you would say that was kind of like a motivating factor to get into fitness?
Well, like, of course it originally aspired from hate towards my body, and I hate to say it like that, but it was true. And, you know, I wanted to deal with that some sort of way. And obviously with running, I found the fight and the suffering, you know, attractive, and I stuck with that, and I knew that I would see progress through that. And, you know, over time, it would take, you know, times for me to talk with my parents, you know, and for them to reassure me, you know, our coaches, that as long as you stick with it, you know, to not also be so hard on yourself through the process, because that's how I was. I was too concerned with perfectionism. I was too concerned with, man, if I don't finish this half mile, you know, I'm not going to be where I want to be, or things like that. But nowadays, like, I'm a lot more relaxed with myself because I know I can be disciplined enough to recap if I need to. But once you're at the beginning, it's a whole different story because, you know, you're going to need accountability. Like with pornography, like I had to call Joseph because he works with Celebrate Recovery every other day or so if I was, you know, struggling with it. And, you know, me calling him before anything happened gave me the reassurance, you know, okay, I can push through this. I'm going to put this aside and keep stepping forward. And so I've broken through this thing. And, you know, that's where I guess you can say the growth and how I saw my body over time. And I'm still learning to be, like, to this day, to be honest, but I'm in a way healthier place than I was, you know, 10, 12 years ago.
For sure. That's awesome. So basically, there was a hatred in your heart, really come for like towards yourself. But running became that avenue. Running became that stream of which you found yourself in, and then God turned that hatred around for a love and a passion because you love and you're passionate about it now.
Definitely.
Isn't that the beauty of like how God just works all things together for good?
I was like,
you know
what
I mean?
the enemy meant for evil, Jesus used for good, and it's just been like a beautiful journey, and I don't know how to explain it. It's gone by so quickly and so rapidly, yet so much happened. And I knew the hand of God was on it, and I knew that everything that was going to happen was covered by him. And, you know, the way I see it now, running it's a part of me, and I don't think I would ever be able to let it go. Like, of course, there's times where, like, I'll decrease how much I run because of certain training goals. But I don't ever want to stop, you know, until the day I die, really.
Yeah. That's so crazy. So the Lord took that and now turned it into an inspiration,
a
motivation for other people.
Yeah,
right.
I knew that once I saw others being inspired, I was like, this. I wasn't brought up this way for nothing. I'm going to be used as a motivation and inspiration towards others, because I know there's many people who are lacking, to be straightforward, discipline, who are lacking the will to suffer, lacking the will to fight. I had a pretty cool experience with somebody that pulled up beside me on a run the other month. And it was this lady. She was probably in her 40s, and she was like, "Man, you're out here all the time and stuff. How do you do it?" And I was like, "Just be consistent." And she started spilling out her life story to me, and I was like, "Oh man, this is really what people are gonna need from me now is motivation and support." Yeah. And she started telling me like what's wrong with her diet and like how bad they eat, and like how her husband is like smokes like a pack a day and stuff like that. And I told her, you're going to have to make little changes. And I just gave her a realistic perspective of what was wrong with the situation. And, she was really grateful for the advice. And, it's cool too, because there was another individual in my neighborhood who he's probably in like his 70s, but the more I've seen myself run in the neighborhood, the more I've seen him walk in the neighborhood.
Oh, wow.
It was cool because the first time I would begin running in the certain area, he was not walking at all. And I remember seeing him on runs, and he would start walking around his street loop, and then I would go out on like my further runs, and this was probably like a year later. I would see him out probably like a mile or two from his home. I would be like, oh man, I wonder if I caused this, not to be in a sense of pride, but like I've never seen him out this far. And now recently this guy walks all down through like Main Street Extended. He's walking he's also walking a lot faster too, so that's how I know he's growing. Like once you become faster in the longer distances, it was just like seeing somebody else's journey without speaking to them, right? But knowing you've impacted them just by doing what you usually do.
That's wild.
I was like,
I love it.
That's how I knew the hand of God was upon what he created me to be,
That's so good. I love it, man. Well, this has been an awesome time. Great conversation with you. Love it. Thank you. So people can find you on YouTube.
Yep.
Instagram. Facebook too?
I don't use Facebook as much as I should.
Yeah, it's a millennial thing.
No, Instagram, YouTube. I'm going to have to post like an actual video soon, because all I post is reels right now. It's just like motivational content. There's not a lot of like me talking really. But no, like the best content is just documenting what you do. Don't try, just do. Yeah. And
you're taking people along for the journey with you.
Yeah.
And that in itself is inspiring other people.
Exactly.
I love it, man.
That's where I am right now, and who knows where I'm going to head next. Yeah. Probably going to have a ultra marathon documentary. Yeah. You never know.
Come on.
Those are cool.
Yeah. So I love it, man. Well, thank you so much for your time and being here and sharing your heart. I love what you're doing. I love how you're motivating and inspiring people through social media. But more importantly, I love that you're walking in what you're passionate about. And
it's important to stay pure in it too, because if there's that little bit of deception, the enemy has access, and I don't want that.
Yeah, that's right. And I attest, man, I your heart's pure, your heart's right, and I really feel like the Lord is giving you influence in people's lives because it comes from a pure heart. You know what I mean? So it's awesome. So I encourage you, man, keep going, keep running. And eventually I'll get out there with you, and I'll show you where it's really at on the pavement.
All right, yeah, man. I'm down, definitely.
So thanks again, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yep.